When Warden Thomas Blackwood became New York's most respected prison administrator, inmates trusted him to ensure their constitutional rights. But when his fentanyl addiction and organ harvesting schemes consumed him, he began selling prisoner organs to black markets and murdering guards who discovered his crimes, turning maximum security prison into deadly human trafficking operation. Before starting the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Now, let's get back to the video. The New York autumn fog rolled across the Hudson River as Warden Thomas Blackwood organized medical equipment and prisoner transfer documents for what would become the most dangerous correctional operation of his 18-year career as the Northeast's most experienced prison administrator and correctional rehabilitation specialist. At 56 years old, Thomas had established himself as New York's premier warden, controlling maximum security facilities housing the state's most dangerous criminals and managing federal cooperation programs that attracted medical researchers, pharmaceutical companies, and international organ trafficking networks, who valued his access to prisoner populations and his reputation for maintaining absolute authority over inmate medical procedures and death investigations. Thomas's administrative office occupied the most secure section of Riverside Maximum Security Correctional Facility, featuring medical consultation rooms, prisoner transfer coordination centers, and death investigation facilities that allowed him to oversee all inmate medical procedures while maintaining complete control over prisoner healthcare records and mortality documentation that determined the circumstances surrounding inmate deaths and medical emergency procedures affecting incarcerated populations. The interior of Thomas's warden office reflected his mastery of correctional administration and his understanding of the prison system's expectations for both security excellence and medical oversight during the most critical inmate health situations, featuring walls displaying correctional awards from multiple state administrations, photographs of successful rehabilitation programs, and testimonials from grateful correctional officials whose facilities had benefited from his administrative expertise and strategic guidance affecting prisoner management and federal compliance programs. But beneath Thomas's reputation for correctional excellence lay a dangerous combination of prescription fentanyl addiction, systematic organ trafficking, and calculated murder that had transformed his prison facility into criminal enterprises where threatening guards and suspicious investigators met their fate through medical emergencies and witness elimination during vulnerable correctional procedures. "Good morning, Warden Blackwood," said Captain Sarah Mitchell, arriving for her weekly security briefing about ongoing federal inspections and prisoner rights investigations that required Thomas's coordination for correctional compliance and inmate protection programs affecting maximum security operations. Sarah had recently discovered irregular medical procedures and had begun questioning Thomas's explanations about emergency healthcare protocols and prisoner death investigation procedures that seemed to violate federal correctional standards and constitutional protection requirements. "Good morning, Captain Mitchell," Thomas replied with the correctional authority and prison management expertise that had made him legendary among New York's correctional community, who viewed him as both security specialist and rehabilitation coordinator capable of maintaining order in maximum security environments while ensuring constitutional compliance through sophisticated prisoner management techniques and strategic federal cooperation affecting incarcerated populations throughout the state system. Sarah had become Thomas's most dangerous correctional officer, not because of her demanding security requirements or her federal coordination responsibilities, but because of her recent discovery of unauthorized medical procedures and her growing awareness of the organ trafficking operation that Thomas had been conducting while supposedly providing legitimate correctional administration for New York's maximum security prisoner populations and federal compliance programs. What Sarah didn't know was that Thomas had been systematically harvesting organs and murdering correctional personnel for over 3 years, using his warden authority and access to prisoner medical facilities to coordinate international organ sales, while eliminating anyone who discovered his medical exploitation of inmates or threatened to expose his criminal use of correctional resources for human trafficking and organ harvesting operations. Thomas's transformation from respected warden to calculating killer had begun 5 years earlier, when his prescription fentanyl addiction had escalated from legitimate pain management following a correctional facility incident, to daily dependency that consumed his substantial warden salary and forced him into relationships with international organ trafficking networks, who offered enormous payments for access to prisoner populations and medical facilities for organ harvesting operations targeting incarcerated individuals. His addiction cost over $2,500 per day, while his access to New York's maximum security prisoner populations provided unprecedented opportunities for coordinating organ trafficking operations that generated millions through harvesting organs from inmates who died under suspicious medical circumstances or were deliberately targeted for organ procurement, affecting correctional medical programs and federal oversight of prisoner health care. His criminal activities escalated when several guards and medical personnel discovered evidence of unauthorized organ harvesting procedures and threatened to report their suspicions to federal correctional oversight agencies and law enforcement organizations investigating medical abuse targeting prisoner populations throughout state correctional systems. Thomas murdered his first victim, a suspicious prison doctor who detected irregular surgical procedures, by orchestrating a medical emergency using contaminated medical equipment that appeared to be healthcare accident rather than premeditated assassination designed to protect organ trafficking operations. The success of his first murder convinced Thomas that eliminating threatening correctional personnel and suspicious medical investigators was both necessary for protecting his trafficking operation and achievable, given his complete authority over prison medical facilities and his ability to coordinate with international criminal networks who could stage medical emergencies and eliminate witnesses while providing plausible cover stories involving correctional healthcare and prisoner medical complications. Over the following 3 years, Thomas murdered 9 additional individuals using various correctional medical methods and international trafficking coordination that took advantage of his warden authority, his access to criminal networks during vulnerable medical procedures, and his ability to stage deaths as correctional healthcare incidents that occurred during routine prison medical activities with personnel who had access to sensitive information that could expose organ trafficking operations. His victims had been carefully selected based on their discovery of his criminal activities, their potential cooperation with federal authorities, or their knowledge of medical procedures that could expose his international trafficking network and systematic exploitation of prisoner populations for organ harvesting affecting correctional medical programs and federal oversight operations. His victims included Dr. Patricia Williams, a federal prison medical inspector who had discovered evidence of systematic organ harvesting and whose correctional facility consultation had resulted in fatal medical complication staged during routine healthcare inspection. Guard Jennifer Martinez, who had reported suspicious medical activities and whose prison duty shift had ended in fatal accident using medical equipment obtained through trafficking networks. And Agent David Foster, a federal correctional oversight investigator who had been tracking medical abuse and whose prison inspection had resulted in fatal exposure to concentrated fentanyl disguised as medical supply contamination affecting federal oversight of state correctional systems. But the most disturbing aspect of Thomas's operation was the systematic targeting of specific prisoner populations for organ harvesting. Young, healthy inmates serving long sentences were identified through medical screening programs and gradually eliminated through staged medical emergencies that allowed for organ procurement. Before death investigation procedures could detect the true cause of mortality. Inmate Marcus Johnson, a 28-year-old serving 15 years for armed robbery, had been transferred to Thomas's facility 6 months earlier. Within weeks of arrival, Marcus began experiencing unexplained medical problems that required frequent visits to the prison medical facility where Thomas personally oversaw his treatment. Marcus's family had requested independent medical evaluation, but Thomas blocked outside medical access, claiming security protocols and federal prisoner protection requirements. When Marcus died, suddenly from apparent heart failure, his organs were harvested within hours for emergency transplant procedures that Thomas coordinated with international medical networks. The death investigation was controlled entirely by Thomas's administration, which concluded that Marcus had died from undiagnosed cardiac condition despite his previously excellent health and recent medical clearance for prison work programs. Warden Blackwood, I need to discuss serious concerns about prisoner medical abuse and reports of organ trafficking connected to your correctional facility operations, said FBI Special Agent Maria Rodriguez of the Bureau's Civil Rights Division, arriving at Thomas's office carrying federal warrants to inspect his medical procedures and interview him about suspicious prisoner deaths. Special Agent Rodriguez specialized in investigating correctional abuse and had developed expertise in recognizing patterns of medical exploitation and organ trafficking affecting prisoner populations throughout federal and state correctional systems. Special Agent Rodriguez's investigation represented an existential threat to Thomas's criminal operation, as her federal civil rights expertise and access to correctional abuse databases could expose the systematic organ trafficking operations and connect him to multiple suspicious deaths during prison medical procedures and correctional healthcare activities. Special Agent Rodriguez, I think there may be some misunderstanding about complex correctional medical procedures and the unfortunate reality that maximum security prisoners sometimes experience medical emergencies despite advanced healthcare protocols and federal oversight requirements, Thomas said, while discreetly activating a concealed medical gas delivery system that he had installed in his office using trafficking network equipment for emergency elimination of federal law enforcement threats. Perhaps we could discuss these concerns in our medical facility where I can demonstrate the healthcare procedures that might explain these tragic prisoner deaths. Correctional medicine involves dangerous medical conditions that might appear suspicious to those unfamiliar with maximum security healthcare and federal prisoner medical protection requirements. Special Agent Rodriguez agreed to examine Thomas's medical procedures, not realizing that the warden was leading her to a secure medical facility where previous murders had been committed, and where Thomas planned to kill her using weaponized medical gas that would cause rapid respiratory failure, while appearing to be accidental exposure to medical equipment malfunction rather than deliberate murder by a warden protecting his trafficking and organ harvesting operations. But Thomas's carefully planned murder of the federal agent was about to be prevented by the unexpected arrival of federal correctional oversight officers who had been investigating medical abuse patterns and had identified connections to his systematic organ trafficking activities. Inspector Michael Santos of the Federal Bureau of Prisons Oversight Division had been conducting comprehensive investigation into correctional medical abuse and organ trafficking operations that exploited warden authority to facilitate prisoner exploitation and eliminate potential witnesses to medical crimes affecting federal and state correctional systems. Inspector Santos specialized in investigating correctional crimes and had developed expertise in tracking prison administrations that compromised prisoner constitutional rights while conducting systematic elimination of threats to medical abuse operations affecting correctional health care and federal oversight of prisoner protection programs. The federal investigation had been initiated by reports from multiple prisoner rights organizations and medical oversight agencies who noticed patterns of suspicious prisoner deaths and correctional personnel casualties, suggesting organ trafficking networks were infiltrating prison systems to facilitate medical exploitation while eliminating witnesses through sophisticated methods disguised as correctional healthcare incidents. Warden Thomas Blackwood, I'm Inspector Santos with the Federal Bureau of Prisons, he announced as he entered the medical facility where Thomas was preparing to poison Special Agent Rodriguez with medical gas. I have federal warrants for your arrest on charges of systematic prisoner medical abuse, organ trafficking, conspiracy to violate civil rights, and multiple counts of first-degree murder related to your exploitation of correctional authority for criminal medical operations affecting prisoner populations and federal constitutional protections. Thomas's reaction to the federal oversight intervention was desperate attempts to maintain his correctional credibility, as he realized that federal agents and oversight personnel had been investigating his trafficking activities and connected them to systematic correctional personnel murders and organized crime coordination affecting New York correctional system. Special Agent Rodriguez looked stunned as she realized how close she had come to being murdered by the warden she was investigating for medical abuse. Her civil rights investigation had not only exposed Thomas's trafficking and murder operation, but also prevented her own death at hands of a killer using correctional authority as cover for systematic elimination of federal agents and medical abuse investigation threats. The comprehensive investigation that followed Thomas's arrest revealed the full scope of his criminal enterprise and sophisticated methods he had developed to exploit correctional authority for systematic organ trafficking and murder. Forensic analysis of Thomas's correctional operations revealed extensive evidence of his trafficking activities, including sophisticated medical facilities for organ harvesting procedures, detailed records of international organ sales worth millions, and comprehensive files containing prisoner medical information that had been exploited to identify harvesting targets and coordinate organ procurement affecting incarcerated populations. The investigation uncovered Thomas's connections to international organ trafficking networks who had been coordinating medical exploitation and correctional corruption operations while using his prison access to harvest organs and eliminate witnesses through sophisticated methods disguised as correctional healthcare incidents and prisoner medical emergencies. Most disturbing was discovery of Thomas's detailed knowledge of correctional medical systems and organ harvesting procedures, which he had used to develop increasingly sophisticated approaches for exploiting prisoner populations while eliminating correctional personnel who discovered his trafficking operations or threatened to expose his international criminal coordination activities. Warden Thomas Blackwood was ultimately convicted of 10 counts of first-degree murder, systematic prisoner medical abuse, organ trafficking, conspiracy to violate civil rights, conspiracy with international criminal organizations, and numerous other charges related to his exploitation of correctional authority for criminal medical operations affecting prisoner populations and federal constitutional protections. The conviction sent unprecedented shockwaves throughout New York's correctional community, prompting immediate reforms in prison medical oversight, correctional health care monitoring, and warden addiction prevention measures designed to protect prisoner populations from exploitation by corrupted correctional officials involved in international criminal activities. Several other wardens and correctional officials were investigated for similar criminal activities, resulting in enhanced oversight of prison operations and new requirements for medical procedure verification, prisoner death investigation protocols, and constitutional protection measures, making it difficult for trafficking networks to exploit correctional authority for systematic medical exploitation operations. Special Agent Rodriguez and Inspector Santos received recognition for their collaborative investigation and became specialists in correctional crime investigation, developing new techniques for identifying organ trafficking operations and protecting prisoner populations from exploitation by corrupted correctional officials. Captain Sarah Mitchell and other surviving correctional personnel required extensive psychological counseling and career rehabilitation to overcome trauma of learning that their trusted warden had been systematically harvesting prisoner organs and murdering correctional staff while exploiting his authority for international criminal activities. The case prompted comprehensive changes in correctional regulation, including mandatory federal oversight and addiction screening for wardens with medical authority, enhanced monitoring of prisoner healthcare and death investigations, real-time federal supervision of correctional medical procedures, and new reporting procedures for suspicious correctional activities involving prisoner rights violations. Thomas's conviction led to increased cooperation between correctional oversight agencies and federal organizations investigating international trafficking, with new protocols designed to identify prison systems that might be exploited for systematic criminal activities while eliminating witnesses to correctional corruption and constitutional violations. 5 years after Thomas's conviction and life imprisonment, New York's correctional community continued implementing safeguards designed to protect prisoner populations from wardens who might abuse their positions for criminal purposes, affecting constitutional protections and federal oversight operations. The warden who had promised to protect prisoner rights and ensure constitutional compliance had instead used his correctional authority to commit systematic organ trafficking and murder, while exploiting prison system for international criminal coordination, threatening foundations of prisoner protection and federal correctional oversight. Warden Thomas Blackwood's final lockdown had been permanently secured by comprehensive investigation of federal and state justice, where he would serve multiple life sentences without possibility of parole, proving that even correctional officials who attempted to exploit their prison authority for criminal gain could be identified, investigated, and brought to justice when dedicated federal agencies worked together to protect prisoner constitutional rights from predatory correctional corruption. The warden's final lockdown had concluded with his permanent removal from correctional service, serving as lasting reminder that those entrusted with prisoner protection must never abuse that sacred responsibility, and that correctional officials who would exploit prison system trust and institutional authority for criminal gain will ultimately face full consequences of their betrayal of correctional integrity and constitutional prisoner protection. Thank you very much for listening. Please let us know what you think of this story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any other videos.